This is an episode of an Instagram live conversation I had with psychic medium Dusten Lyvers. And just again, heads up, since it was on IG Live, we weren't really using professional audio recording equipment at all. So have a little patience with that. It's still a really good conversation with a really great person. Dusten Lyvers is a scientifically verified Forever Family Foundation certified psychic medium. He's also a licensed counselor. He's based in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Some fun facts are that he is the lead psychic medium with Michiana Paranormal Investigations, a comparative religion scholar, and a ballroom dance performer for Dancing with the Stars. He's also really smart, really evidential, and just a fun, interesting person. Welcome to What the Fuck Just Happened. I'm your host, Liz Enton. If you listened to the intro, you know my story. If not, here's a brief summary. I'm a sciencey-skeptic, and when my dad died, I took a shot in the dark and decided to investigate if there was any possible evidence of an afterlife. I assumed that was as realistic as Santa Claus, but I was desperate. However, I was so blown away by what I discovered that I wrote a book and launched this podcast. In this podcast, I'll be talking to some fairly normal people about some really weird shit. I speak with everyone from psychic mediums and afterlife researchers to ordinary people who've had some inexplicable experiences. So come, listen. There's no need to draw any final conclusions. Keep an open mind and wonder, what the fuck just happened? Hey everyone! I'm really excited to let you know about the science and spirituality salons I'm now hosting. During these intimate events, a scientifically verified psychic medium will give all of you readings, and I will give a talk on the science and evidence that changed my mind about an afterlife. This will also be an amazing opportunity to get to meet some of you in person or virtually, and to share more about all the science and data that transformed my worldview and got me through my worst days. These can be hosted in your home, in a nearby cafe with a private room, or they can even be virtual. I've hosted a few already, and they were really special, fascinating, emotional, evidential. So if you're interested in getting a small group together over dinner, brunch, drinks, coffee, to learn more about the science and to get evidential medium readings, send me an email at hello@WTFJustHappened.net and put science and spirituality. I'm just getting the video right back. Sorry about that.
Oh, there
Hi,
you are.
Justin. I'm here.
Hi. Oh, and Brittany's in here. I just had
Hi,
an interview
Brittany.
with Brittany earlier.
Well, thank you for joining us. Sorry for that little glitch. I'm at my mom's place and she doesn't always have the best internet, so like it just froze for a second. I was all good. And hi everyone, welcome to What the Fuck Just Happened. And I'm here talking with psychic medium Dusten Lyvers, who is a friend. He's one of our certified mediums with Forever Family Foundation, where I volunteer, as anyone who follows me knows about. And Dusten was not the very first medium I met, but I met him in my skeptical early days still too. And he's super talented. And
I remember that. Wait, I think Jack Mario was with us.
Jack Mario and Rebecca and Liz Cicero, who was on my last Instagram live for anyone who was listening. And
Yeah, it was like, I guess, probably 2017, I think. So I'd been studying this for 2 years. Does that sound right?
I think maybe, yeah, that's not, it was a while. So that was 4 years ago. Yeah.
Wow. Time with like the pandemic and everything feels so distorted. But I'm going to kind of, in some of mine and Dustin's conversation, I'm going to back up a little to asking some of the types of questions I was asking him when I first met him. So you're going to get the full skeptical early day Liz questions
I
as
don't even
well.
remember those. I'm excited to know what they are.
Oh my God. Well, I know the unanswerable one, which I mean, I'm just going to say it now because you're not going to answer it. It's what molecular substance consciousness is made of when we pass away. That's not my early skeptical. That's why I ask everyone now. And everyone's like, what the fuck, Liz? How could I answer that? I know. I know. I asked Dr. Julie Beischel that, and when she was just like, no one knows that. I was like, okay, if Dr. Beischel can't answer, no one can.
Mhm.
But I will just say, because I love this story, I think I posted it in the little promotion, but in my parents' bedroom, and anyone who follows me knows my dad passed. And so in their bedroom, my parents have this brown wooden dresser, and there is a gold handle that's missing. And Dustin, giving me a reading, described that dresser exactly. He's like, I'm
I remember.
seeing. Do you remember? And
Yeah.
I was my
It was such an
skeptical.
odd thing for me to be aware of. I remember that.
I know that. And then the other thing I remember you did was we met at an event, like a conference that Rebecca was doing or a convention. And Dustin was doing group reading and he started to list all my family members. So I was like, yeah, that reading's for me. And one thing I remember is you said my grandfather keeps talking about a watch to my mother. And I was like, no, that I have no idea.
Yeah,
You
didn't know.
don't?
No. I remember you did not remember or know.
I had no idea. I kept saying no, and Dustin was like, go just check with your mom. And I did, and it was really significant. Like, it had been his grandfather's, and he gave it to my mom, and someone unfortunately stole it. My mom had like shame and guilt her whole life, and he was basically like, so she actually, my mom doesn't really believe any of this, was pretty touched by that message. So that's like my many of the reasons I'm super excited about Dustin and his evidentialness. And yeah, now I'm going to ask the questions. So Dustin, I'm just curious, when you get this information, what does it feel like? Like, is it like my grandfather's sitting in front of you and you're talking to him the way you are with me now? Like, that's something I always feel like I just can't even understand what it is like.
So Liz, I appreciate you really getting into this because something I've been doing just in my studies is something called phenomenology. I don't know if with all of your research if you've heard of that, but
Never.
Is a phenomenon, and so in phenomenology, it's really more of a philosophy, but it's also a research method. It's really being aware and describing what is happening, what is phenomenon. And so when I do readings, my best way of describing the phenomenon of mediumship, when I'm hearing or sensing a spirit, is there's for me, there's typically feelings, hearing things, seeing things.
Can I just ask what feelings are? Do you mean emotions the way I would talk about feelings, or physical sensations?
So feelings are emotions, physical sensations. And so for me, when I first connect to spirit, it's typically a feeling like a presence. Like it's like someone walks in the room and you feel you're aware. It's kind of like when someone's looking at you, like you feel the eyes on the back of your head, like you feel that. And then I start to feel personality, and I will hear and see things. So those are typically my three strongest clairs, the sentience, voyance, and clairaudience. And so it's really the sensation, and then the clairsentience, the clairaudience, clairvoyance. So, but it's not like they're kind of across from me. It's more of I'm kind of aware of the spatial energy around me, and then I feel the spirits kind of coming in. It's kind of like they're like sitting into me. It's kind of a weird sensation to describe, but it's kind of like they're sitting into me. It's kind of like a shadowing.
Oh, I'm so jealous because that sounds amazing. I am so, like, you have no idea how jealous I am to hear that. What is that, like, the best way I can interpret what you mean by that? Like, when someone you care about, or maybe even don't, like someone who somehow affects you and they say something of significance, like, you know, if it's a deep emotion, like someone you're dating and they're like, you know, realize I'm so in love with you. If it's your boss and they're like, you know, you're one amazing employee, or you're fired. I mean, both those are intense emotions, and I'll sort of feel emotions pouring over me. And it's like it changes in the moment. Like, I don't exactly want to say who I am, but like, you know, I'll take the, like, you know, your boyfriend or whatever saying I'm so in love with you. Like, you do change in the moment. Like, let's say you wake up having a horrible day and you're feeling insecure and you're like, my life's not together and I don't know if you know, this is the right relationship. Then it's like something like that can change, and you go from, like, in the moment being an unhappy person to happy. Like, for an example, is it sort of like that where you just feel like the feelings of a different person sort of pouring over you that way? Like, is it similar to that?
For me, I almost always start with the personality. So actually, sometimes my sitters will see my face first. So they'll see a smile or a frown, or they'll notice I have a reaction before I even open up my mouth and start talking. So they actually see the blending, and they will actually recognize. and I've gotten that feedback many times. And so for me, it's more of the personality. I feel the smile, right? I feel them being happy. I feel the warmth that they have for you. Or I feel the frown, or I feel the not wanting to step forward. I feel them being hesitant, right? They don't want to come through. I have to push them. So it's typically the personality. And then I do feel emotions. But for me, it's usually personality first.
Okay. I know. Yeah, when you gave me my reading, I remember you really getting my dad's personality, like, pretty instantly. Or later. Yeah, it was really.
Yeah, it is. That's how it is.
So one thing that you just said that I actually have no idea how you even deal with, because you said, you know, one thing you feel them coming in with love, and then some that are hesitant. So how do you deal, let's say someone's like had a very abusive parent or a very traumatic relationship. Do you have readings like that? And if so, how do you cope with that?
Well, there's a lot of parts to that question. So to answer your question, does it happen? Yes, absolutely. I would be skeptical of any medium that said no. You know, I would be like, there's probably a reason why that hasn't happened. But when I deliver a message, when I feel the resistance or the pain, or when I find that's like the first thing I feel, I'm very attentive to that. And so I will change how I deliver. So my tone of voice will change. I will intentionally shift, right? From being positive, fun Dusten that's having a good time to, okay, we're going to some deep stuff right away. We're moving to the heart space, right? And I have to be intentional about how I deliver. You know, this person was not positive. You know, this was a negative energy for you. And sometimes I will get abuse. I will just say to them, you know, I'll always preface it with, you know, I can be wrong, you know, or I don't want to offend you, but this person's telling me that they were abusive. And I'll say, do you understand that? Does that make sense to you? So I'm always careful about how I phrase things and how I deliver. Specifically, I know I have training as a therapist that not all mediums have. So I don't want to get sued, you know? So they might be like, oh, Dustin's a therapist? Oh, he's really caused me harm, right? People would like that. Lawyers would be all up, you know? But so I have to be double intentional. I have to be double cautious, right, about how I would deliver something like that.
Okay, I'm going to go back to my questions a little bit, but Grief in the Grief rawest form has a question. And this is, actually, I had this early on too that didn't make sense to me. So how do mediums do readings through the phone or video if they always thought it was a physical thing? So how does that work?
Well, spirit is with you. They're not with me. And it's an energy, right? So spirit does not have a physical body. They're not constrained by physics or time, right? So spirit can connect through, energy, however you best want to describe that. So they're also intelligent, right? So spirit understands phones, right? So they're going to be able to utilize the technology that we have, right? So since COVID, I've exclusively been doing private sittings through the phone, Skype, Zoom, just regular phone calls. But they can communicate just as effectively, or I wouldn't be doing it. Right? I'm an ethical practitioner. If I felt I couldn't do my best, I wouldn't be doing it. So.
And I guess I'm just curious, how are they able to do that? Because there's no space, like the limitations of physical space, that they could be with their loved one and they're easily able to communicate with you.
Yes.
And so they're able to reach you while they're like if the way maybe we could teleport,
Yeah.
You're welcome, Grief.
Yeah, you're
Grief's
welcome. That's a good question. So, it's not. Yeah, it's not a limitation to a physical experience. Now, I prefer in person. I like the connection. I like getting along with people. I love that. I love my job. I love people. I love connecting with people. And so I prefer that. But obviously with COVID, things are not as simple as they used to be. So.
Yeah. I know as a sitter at this point, especially with mediums I've become friends with, I prefer in person, but scientifically, there's something to be said for phone, which in the beginning, I only wanted to do phone as soon as I read this. I believe it was in Dr. Julie Beichel's books, where mediums, I know you guys, I know the genuineness, but in the beginning, if you're really skeptical, phone is a good way, especially if you use a Google Voice number. Phone is a really good way because you can guarantee the medium is not judging you based on age or, anything you might be wearing that could, that could give away maybe what you do for work, just anyway, or micro expressions that maybe you don't even realize. If you're skeptical, I think as a sitter, going to get a medium reading, phone is good. I've had equally amazing readings that I've received, phone and in person. I find in person more, I like the energy of it too. I like that sort of being with the person in the room. And I guess I want to back up because this question hit me back to our conversation about how you deal with abusive, and I'm going to avoid getting political. Anyone who follows my account knows I get political a bit too, but certainly there's been some things where we would like people to be held accountable for doing horrible things and they're not. And how is that? If you get someone who says they were abusive, are they usually more enlightened? I apologize for that, or are they more just don't care, maybe however they were in their lifetime, or rationalizing it, or whatever excuses people make to themselves that makes them able to be horrible to others?
Mm-hmm. So you have to remember, what you're asking, Liz, there's a lot of different layers to what you're asking. And I want to come back to my comment I made about if mediums say no, there's a reason. So not all mediums are open to delivering hard messages or are able to compassionately link with a spirit that has done horrible things, right? They would find that probably difficult, or they just aren't open to it. And so when I link with somebody who has done horrible things or has been abusive, I don't let them say horrible, abusive things, right? I don't. I'm not gonna let them perpetuate abuse from the other side, right? I'm not going to let them continue, right? That's not my intention, right? That is not what I'm doing.
Right.
Most of the time, if I link to someone like that, they are apologizing. However, there have been a couple of spirits I have linked with who have done horrible things, and are not yet at the place where they are apologizing. I only say things if a spirit pushes me to say it.
In that situation, you mean? Yeah.
And sometimes I will say this person is still learning on the other side.
That makes sense.
Sometimes the sitter will not believe me if I say they're apologizing. They'll say, I don't believe that at all. However, I will never forget this time I gave a reading, and I said this person has done just some of the worst things imaginable. I'm talking sexual abuse for years, and just some of the worst abuse you could ever imagine to children. And he said that he did not apologize, but I said on his behalf, because I felt this, that he still had learning to do. But he is around, and he will come to that place. And that was they believed that. They said, I wouldn't have believed you if you would have said he was, he just wasn't in that place at the time.
That was, I could see how, my dad was absolutely wonderful, but if someone started saying things about him that were nothing to do with him, which during a very fake reading happened to me early on, where he was saying all this spiritual stuff, and I needed to learn to trust more and open my heart more. And I was like, and she's like, well, see, he's enlightened. I was like, no, my dad basically was like, don't trust people, don't give your money to people. What's this crazy ass person want from you?
Oh my goodness.
If he knew I was giving money to mediums, I think now he's happy about it from what I've heard through mediums, but and if he was living and he knew my experience I'd had at this point with the friendships I've made, I think he'd be, if nothing else, if he didn't end up believing in an afterlife, he'd be happy at the community I built. But no, he would never say you need to be more open and trusting and don't be suspicious. I'm like, no, not especially when I'm exploring mediumship and
Yeah, that sounds like a message that a medium who knew you were skeptical would probably be delivering, right? You need to be more into this.
She was not a Forever Family medium. She was not a Windbridge medium. I never name and shame. She was not genuine. But I will say I'm very grateful for that experience, not in that cheesy toxic positivity bullshit, but in the sense that I learned to trust my assessment as a sitter. Yeah. Because I had a real comparison afterwards, where I was I really started to notice really three things. There was either, I would say it's a very rarity to find what I would consider intentional fraud. I feel there's some that,
I would second that.
There's some that just weren't that evidential, or maybe they didn't connect with my dad. Maybe they'd be lovely with someone else. And then some that just blew me away. Dusten was among the blew me away. I'm not just saying that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. A question. And also, you guys who are coming on now, if anyone else has questions, put them in the chat. I'll ask Dusten. But a question that I found very surprising in the beginning was even a difference. I had no idea that there's a difference between psychic versus medium. Yeah. So oh wait, I'm sorry. We have a question. We have 2 questions. Okay, Dustin will answer my question, then Aiden put in your question, and then Grief's Ross form, I'll ask your question right after Aiden. Okay, you see that. Okay.
So yeah, if you just want to pick the order or tell me which one to respond to.
Okay, so answer my question first, and
I just
then
lost your question.
What?
I was distracted by the chat.
Yeah, I'm getting distracted too. And then we have lots of questions coming in, which I can scroll back to all of them. And I'll just tell you what, after you answer the psychic medium, because I know.
Oh, the difference between psychics and mediums.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a phrase that I don't like, and I'm sure you know the phrase I'm about to say, and that's that
all mediums are psychic, but not all psychics are mediums. Oh, you don't like that? Oh no!
I hate that phrase.
Oh no! It's so ingrained. I tell it to people all the time. Like,
oh, I hate it, Liz.
I'm sorry. You have to tell me why. I thought I was doing the right educational thing.
So I'm sure mediums like that phrase because it's exalting mediums, right? So it's saying mediums can do it all, but psychics can only do this one thing. Right?
Okay.
So I don't want to discredit or empower the profoundness of psychics, right? I mean, psychic readings are just as powerful and healing as mediums readings, right? I mean, we all have different things we need in our lives, at different times. So that's my problem with the phrase. It exalts mediums, and so
okay.
That's my thing. If we all have differences, so that's fine. But to the difference, psychics. If we want to get into the philosophy, right? Psychic is really the big umbrella.
I'm just going to give people the quick, basic definition before I get into the deeper.
Get into philosophy.
Psychic means you are reading
your life.
Yeah, like
personal energy, and mediumship is connecting to an actual discarded spirit that
someone who's died,
that has passed. Yes.
Yes. Okay, so now let's get back to the philosophical, and then before I ask more questions, we'll get into all the people's questions because I could ask 80 questions, So yeah, get into what you were saying, because you were going to say something very deep and interesting, and I just wanted to make sure everyone knew the basics before going there.
At the model of psychic phenomena, right? Like psychic's the big one, right? Any type of extrasensory is psychic. So mediumship is actually an extension, right? It's a more specific type of something under the umbrella of psychic. Same as empath, right? It's still an extrasensory phenomena, right? You're experiencing something outside of the 5 senses, right? And so that's what psychic means, anything outside of the 5, right? So that's really the basic.
Psychic outside of the 5 material senses, like sight, but they still use those 5 senses, just not used with the material, through the material dimension.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's really the big philosophical building block. So, but mediumship is actually blending to the soul of a spirit. Yes, we do that through the senses too.
Wait, but how can you tell the difference? Like, how do you know? For example, you're not reading Memories of My Dad when you were reading me. Like,
you feel the spirit and you feel the personality. That is what you feel, right? Sometimes I may even speak words they used to use, or so I don't know if you're familiar with the goals of mediumship that they teach at the Arthur Findlay College. There's 3 goals. So the basic goals they teach over there is that you're able to blend with the personality, right? The personality, clairsentience, like you need to be able to feel the spirit. One of the other goals is to make the sitter feel like they're in the room, right? Like they should know if it's their loved one. It's just kind of a feeling. It's just like a sense. And then the third is to deliver evidential, meaningful messages, right? Those are kind of the 3 basic things they'll teach you at the AFC. Those are the 3 basic ones.
And AFC is Arthur Findlay College in England,
yes.
Which is a mediumship, maybe I don't know if it has other skills like remote viewing and
foremost institution for psychic science and mediumship. Yes.
Okay, Cool. Well, now let's go to people's questions. So I'm scrolling back, guys. So my phone's shaking while I'm scrolling. Okay, I think so. First of all, Adventures with Brittany. Talk about life reviews. If you know anything about those, I know those. There's evidence, according to people like Dr. Bruce Grayson, who, and just the second part, that was referencing back to the abusive people. And just I'll give my quick from the sciencey side. I study near life reviews. Apparently, there's evidence that through people like Dr. Bruce Grayson, who study people who physiologically pass away for a set amount of time and then are resuscitated. And as medicine improves, we're getting more and more cases like that. And there's a lot of consistencies to what they come back reporting. And one of the things is a life review where they're going over what they did right, wrong in their life. So I don't know anything more on a deeper level, Dustin. So all you, I have a feeling Adventures with Brittany wants.
This is also something. So I want to preface that I do not identify as a spiritualist or a spiritist. So I have beliefs and I do mediumship that fall into the spiritualist and spiritist belief systems and religious systems. But I identify as a spiritual person. I do not follow a religion. But I will tell you that in spiritualism, when the mediums are working and they talk about a life review, they say that when we die, we meet our guides, we watch our life like a movie. We kind of watch everything and relive those experiences. And then
that sounds so scary in certain ways. Some parts awesome, but I'm like, oh, can I fast forward past that like super awkward like time when I was 12? That's so embarrassing.
And then based off of our decisions, we kind of evaluate our growth, decide, reincarnation comes into play if you believe in reincarnation or not. Kind of what's next for you? How are you going to atone or not atone, or how are you, right? So there's a lot of different, understandings of the life review, but the basic idea is that you review your life and something happens, right? It's like you kind of something happens after that.
I always say, because I try to do out of body exercises, I have not really had luck as far as I know, maybe one or two weird dreams, like that's a whole other topic, but I'm always like, can Donald Trump just wait to die until I'm good at going out of body? Because I want to watch his life review with a big bowl of popcorn and a glass of wine.
Oh my.
So I'm like, that would be fun. So, sorry, I don't know if that's inappropriate to say, but I am saying that. Oh, her art finds. You have to keep reloading this video every minute. Is anyone else just put in the comments? I'm assuming her art finds. I'm sorry. I think it might be your internet, but if anyone else is having problems, just put in the comments.
We can adjust.
Yeah, we'll see if we can.
I'm reading the questions. I want to come to Grief's rawest form. So they wrote in there, when is it appropriate to visit a medium? My husband passed 2 months ago. Is it too soon? Do I have to wait a certain amount of time?
I'm so sorry for your loss, first of all. I'm really sorry. I know that doesn't cover it, but.
So you have to remember, I might have a different view because I'm also a counselor. And so I work with grief, right, at a therapeutic level. And so what I tell people is I usually will say, I want you to be in the grief process, to have processed your grief in a place where you feel that you are mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually prepared for a reading. So I don't want mediumship to be a substitute for grief. Right? I don't want people to use mediums, become psychic junkies so they don't have to get into their feelings and grieve. Right? That's a problem. And it's actually been written about in the literature, believe it or not. There have been studies about this. People using mediums to avoid grieving. They should be going hand in hand. mediumship can be a part of your grieving process, but it is not a substitute not to feel the feelings connected to the loss of a loved one and not to continue with the grieving process. So I usually encourage, if you wanted me to throw a number out there that I would be comfortable saying, I would say 6 months to a year.
And can I ask you a question about that? Because I remember my first reading, she said I had to wait 6 months. And it was because the energy, she wanted my dad. I didn't tell her it was my dad, obviously. Being the sciencey-skeptic, I was, but she said regarding, whoever has passed, they need to adjust the other side before they're capable of communicating. Do you relate to that in any way? Or is it just more only the mental healing of the grieving?
So I don't believe that. I've had spirits come through who died the day before. So I remember I was reading a woman in John's basement, and I used to live with my mentor, John. And her family was coming through, people that she, wanted to connect with. One of the last spirits, and I won't ever forget this because it was crazy. The evidence was wild. It was wild, Liz. It's one of those readings you don't forget because of how crazy it is. It sticks out to you. I'm sure you've met mediums and they tell you that. There's certain pieces of evidence you'll never forget. And I remember I said, I have a friend, a female friend, and I was describing her, blah, blah, blah. I don't remember every detail, but I remember this. I said, she's telling me that she had an STD. STI now, that's the politically correct term. We say STIs, so sexually transmitted infection. Right. And then she doesn't have it anymore. And she said her friend had herpes. And it was a huge deal. It affected her life, all these things. And she crossed over and she said, I don't have this anymore. And she had told me she died yesterday. And she was wondering if she would come through because she wondered the same thing. Does she have energy? Does she need time to adjust? I said, nope, she's here. But now that was not a super close relationship, right? So like if it's like your husband, right, they're probably not going, or the reading's not going to happen tomorrow, right? But this was like a friend that was kind of around. And so it was, this person was not going to lose sleep over this, right? Like it was not going to negatively impact them to have this spirit come through so quickly. But I won't ever forget that. She came through the day before. It's like she died yesterday.
That's crazy. That's amazing. Wow.
That was wild.
Yeah, I guess well, actually, let's get to Aiden's question. Aiden, Hybrid Wellman. And then I have more questions, even related to what you just said, but I'm going to be looking at his question where concerned about getting to everyone's until we get them. So, yeah. Do you see Aiden's or do you want me to read it to you?
I'm scrolling.
I'll read it to you right now then.
I see it now. The reasons my loved one doesn't come through.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer that or do you want me to answer that? Or both?
I'll answer from my perspective, from what I've heard. But again, this is more like having read the research. So you probably have a more deeper understanding. So Aiden's question, what could be the reason why a loved one does not come through in readings? I mean, what I have heard from research, it could be of many things. First of all, they don't know. Like, we don't know if people have schedules, are busy on the other side. Like, sometimes, like, your parents or your best friend can be calling you and you don't answer your phone or, it's not like you're scheduling with them and they're like, yes, I'm free this time. You're like, hey, come talk to me now. It could be for some reason they don't like the medium. I mean, I don't know.
That's the reason I always say, yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the medium. Some people just don't like each other and, for no reason. I don't know. Those are and then just, I have no idea why. And sometimes if you're getting a lot of readings, they don't know why, but they stopped coming in for a while. I know for a while, was getting too many, I think. It was more a research thing. I was just like, holy shit, these people are defying the laws of the universe. I can't stop looking at this. So I was getting too many, and my dad wasn't really coming in. I was still getting readings about other people, but to me, it was most important to talk to my dad. So I talked to, at the time, my mentor, Fran, who has recently passed away, which was incredibly hard for me. And she was my rock through my whole grief. And I would go to her with those questions. And she was like, you're just getting too many readings, so.
I love Fran.
I know. I will say how Fran would.
Fran would say, you're just getting.
She's like, you're fucking addicted to medium readings. Stop it. Stop it. You know what? You think there's your dad. Imagine if someone called you every 5 minutes. You'd be talking to your dad, and then you'd hang up, and then you'd be back like, Dad, you're driving him crazy. Give him a fucking break. That's how Fran talked. She was my favorite person. I miss her. Oh. But yeah, Dusten, that was Fran, right?
That sounds just like her, yes.
So that's exactly how she worded it, if you want to know.
Oh my goodness. Well, I will add that it could be in the timing, right? So if we think of that idea of divine time, right? If we're on this time, right? When are we ready? When or is there something happening now that would be changed or influenced by this reading, right? So I think that divine time can be another factor, right? It's just not the right time, or there's something happening now that needs to happen before this person steps forward. So that's one reason. Another is it's just too raw, right? Like they're not in a place where they're able to have the reading or be receptive. So that's one. And another is maybe it's the medium's energy. So not just not liking them, but maybe this medium, there's just things about this medium that they're not able to connect with the spirit, right? So I think of, I don't want to name drop anybody. But Liz, we had chatted about a specific medium who had said she never gets anything political. Right? She was never open to anything. If you remember that conversation.
I do, yes.
A spirit who's super political and a medium who doesn't believe in anything political or won't talk about political, right? How that person's not going to come through for that, right? They're not going to, right? You're not going to be able to give one of the most telltale, personality traits of this person, right? Similar with the abuse, right? If you're not open to connecting with people who have done bad things, you're not going to get people who have done bad things, right? Like they're not going to connect, right? There's just something there.
Also, I remember I took a class and with Joe Scheel, who's a wonderful medium. He said sometimes, it could be the best medium in the world. Maybe something's just going on with the medium that day. Like maybe they're sick or, exhausted. Like we all have days, we're really shitty at what we're normally really good at. Like every one of us has that. So, I think that's one thing. At least there's something about especially when you're in early grief, you're just not mediums almost don't feel, and don't take this the wrong way, Dusten, you're all you guys are total real people to me now. But mediums are almost not you don't almost see them as real people, in the early stages. And, it's but they're just humans like everyone else, and they're going to have days they're just not good at what they do. It doesn't mean that consciousness doesn't survive. It doesn't mean anything. We all have off days. And
so with that, I will usually say, do you want to try again, right? In the future, or do you want to try it again? You know what I mean? So I'll usually say, there's something happening. We can schedule another time.
You ever wonder what mediums do with their free time? How about a 30-something-year-old gay medium living in New York City? Well, in this podcast, you're about to find out. Welcome to Ghost Daddy, a place where LGBTQ plus spiritual people, and our cis-hetero allies, of course, have a place to just be themselves and spread their wisdom. This is the new face of spirituality. None of that love and light, toxic positivity crap. So pour yourself a vodka soda, open up your mind, and start listening. You can listen to the Ghost Daddy podcast anywhere where you listen to podcasts.
Right. Do you, I always imagine I would feel this. Do you get really scared before readings or group readings that like, oh my God, what if no one comes through? Like, I feel like when I think about if I were a medium, like I would be so scared about that all the time.
So when I was younger, I used to get an incredible amount of anxiety. So, like to the point where I would need to like breathe, and like John would have to calm me down, and I would like have to, and I have anxiety just in general. But it was incredibly a large amount. Now, it's healthy. What we call in the literature eustress. It's a healthy, positive stress that gets us motivated, excited. It gets me going, right, to get in there and do a good reading. So it's still a little anxiety provoking, but it's a positive anxiety. It's a positive. It fuels me instead of turning me down, right? It kind of moves me to get in there.
I have we have a quick question from Laura Birdie Girl, and then I have some more questions. How long should you wait between readings? Do you have insight into this? I can say my experience with that.
On my website, I have listed on there that I make people wait 6 months.
Between readings?
Yeah.
Oh.
For the same type of reading. So I do psychic and medium. So if somebody gets a psychic reading and then they want another one, I say you have to wait 6 months. If you want a mediumship reading, that's fine. You can come in.
And if you're going to different mediums, I don't think there's any like time thing, because I've gone to like Forever Family will do, for example, their grief retreats, and you go from medium group to medium group, and some people keep getting read. I mean, I think there really isn't a space between how long. I think it's just when you start going regularly to mediums. Like when I was at first researching this, I started going like every week practically to a different medium. And I was just like, it was like literally walking into a different dimension, watching like it was just the most, I mean, yes, I was in deep grief, but it wasn't just like, I think the same way someone would keep getting readings who believed in an afterlife. Like this was coming from me who thought there was zero chance of it, suddenly observing like, I mean, as well as like the healing from medium readings that everybody probably has. It was also like, I don't know, stepping into like a 5-year-old childhood fantasy and discovering it's real. And you're like, this is crazy. Like, I can't stop watching this and observing, I
make people wait because I don't want them to become dependent on me or to become psychic junkies. I'm an ethical practitioner. So I do not want anybody becoming dependent or, and one thing that I'm skeptical of with clients, we can be skeptical too. It's not just the sitters. The mediums can be skeptical of clients. If they're going around and they're getting tons of readings, and then they may ask me, I don't know about other people, but they sometimes have asked me about time frames. Well, I heard from this other person that I'm going to get this job in 3 months. Do you see that for me? And I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, so that just puts us in an position, right? Like one of you is wrong, or she's hanging on by a thread, or they're not going to be open to listening to anything. So that's a danger that comes with a bunch of readings, right? That's why, I only go for a reading for myself maybe once a year or every couple years. I don't go for my own readings, I just can't imagine doing that myself.
Yeah, I guess for me, when I was doing it that much, from everything I know, I wouldn't recommend it for healing. I would recommend it if you're starting to actually do data research, which I wasn't doing professionally. I was doing it for myself, but it was like, to me, the equivalent is if I was started to research, which I'm not smart enough to do, unfortunately, but like research string theory or like, when you start delving into a research project of a topic that fascinates you. So I was like scoring, matching things up. Like, it was very much like a data research scientific thing for me. And that was incredibly basically like the most, I just don't, it's hard to talk about, not like emotionally. I just don't have the words. It's like a level of profound transformation of like understanding how the world works. I don't think our English language has the proper vocabulary for. So like I try to explain how profound in the way it was profound for me, and it's just, we don't have language. Like the best, like the closest I've heard people talking about that I can identify with is like when people go into outer space. It's like this level, or like, I don't know. Yeah, it's frustrating because I know I can never really accurately communicate. I can just get it. I mean, maybe if someone else has experienced it. It's just, I guess one way, and I've said this before, so I kind of hope I'm not being annoying saying it again if I'm having people listen too much, but it's really the best way. It's like, if I woke up and like saw like a weird door in my apartment that I'd lived in my whole life, and I was like, what is that? And I walked in and I entered a room that was filled, like painted in colors that don't exist on our color spectrum. Like, that's just unfathomable. It was like, you just would have to, like, you could not just let that go. You'd have to delve in. And that to me was what, I guess, mediumship, or all afterlife evidence research, it felt like to me. So, like, let's see, Dustin. I also want to ask, how did you first know you were a medium?
So Brittany asked me that question too in the earlier podcast. So,
oh, well, so sorry. You have to go again, say the same shit again and again.
The stories line up. They're gonna compare.
Oh yeah, well, I'll do like a scientific study of it where I like line it up, write points, check off, and be like, let me see how true this is.
You're like, yeah, they're gonna be, yeah.
Is that true? He said.
So it's a process. So I always equate it as a process, right? So it's never like you just kind of have one moment, right? And you're just like, oh my gosh, this is who I am and this is what is happening, right? It doesn't happen, right? So there's actually, if you want to get into the real nitty gritty literature, there's actually some identity models for mediums of how integrating the identity of a medium happens over time, or how it actually, that identity development. So for me, there were signs as a child. I was seeing shadows, faces in the shadows, and my dad would have to actually come in to my bedroom with a can of air freshener, and he would actually spray the air freshener around my room, in the closet, under the bed, anywhere that there was, dark shadows, and he would say, this is going to get rid of the monsters. And that was how I was able to sleep. And that's actually a technique that I use now for people with sensitive kids. That's actually something. So I got that from my dad. But so over time, there were, obviously other things that have happened. But I didn't have a name for being a medium or knew what it was until I met my mentor, John. And that was when I was 19. And that was like a Harry Potter moment. When Hagrid told Harry, you're a wizard, Harry. John had told me, medium. And I didn't believe him, I was like, what? No, you're crazy, what is that? And then, I started working with John, long story short. And that's how I discovered and embraced and started working as a medium.
Wow. So, I mean, I'm assuming very, very few people would have that kind of upbringing, but like in your childhood, was like, had you ever met mediums? Was it something that was like considered something people could do? Because according in my life, I never met a single one. It just would have, like, it was just not even on the radar of reality.
So I was raised, my mom's side is Catholic and my dad's side is non-denominational Christian. And so we were not raised in I would say, like we may think of a traditional Christian childhood. Like we didn't go to church every Sunday. We celebrated Christmas, but we didn't read the Bible every day. We said like prayers here and there, before bedtime. But we never had any mediums, any new ageism, any spiritualism, nothing outside. I had never been raised, or that was never shown to me. So it's kind of interesting. My whole family is like, how did you get to be like this?
Right.
How are you a spiritual therapist, a psychic medium? How are you doing all of this spirituality stuff, you know, when you never had anything like that. I mean, it was really something, you know.
Yeah, I mean, how much also, actually, you are the only medium I know. I'm sure you're not the only one in the world, but you're the only one I know who is a therapist as well. And in my mind, sorry, I'm just have to adjust one quick thing with my phone. You can keep talking, but sorry about that. How do the two play into each other? Because both are very healing. I mean, I'll shut up about what my opinions would be. I just think it seems like a really good thing.
And so my idea, and actually this is also in the literature, if you do any research about mediumship and paranormal journals and things, but most mediums have some kind of healing background, or they have some kind of interest in psychology, or they've communication, or some kind, there's been some life experiences or something in there. You know, they don't have to be licensed therapists, but they've had some kind of interest or some. So Tyler Henry's a good example. He talked about being a nursing aide, I think, for a while. He was a, you know, so most of us have had some kind of healing background in that way. And so they go hand in hand. So like similar, like I was describing when a spirit's, you know, talking about abuse, right? I'm not going to laugh and smile and share, oh, they were abusive, right?
They used to beat the shit out of you every day. Like,
I'm going to tap into those counseling skills, right? Give them the space, my tone of voice, how I deliver, right? Give them time to process, right? If they're crying, give them time to process, right? Don't just keep talking over them while they're crying. You know, if I can give any medium some helpful tips. And then similarly, when I do my counseling work, all the time I'm getting psychic information, empathic, you know, information about my clients, you know, especially in crisis work. You know, if you do crisis counseling, I've done a lot of crisis counseling, you need to be able to build rapport and know what's going on very quickly. You need to be able to get in there and make it work, right? It's a crisis. So being intuitive, that is a huge edge to any type of crisis intervention, any type of crisis counseling. You know, but they go hand in hand. They are not necessarily mutually exclusive. You know, now there are some ethical rules, right? I can't go into a full-blown reading in a counseling session. Right? I can't be like, your father's here and then bill insurance, right? Oh, that'll be $180 from Blue Cross Blue Shield. There you go. Oh yeah, his father had all kinds of things to say, right? Like that's not okay. But a lot of intuitive information does come up, or it moves my line of inquiry. Right, I kind of know where to go, or I kind of know what to ask, or I kind of know, you know. Does that make sense?
That does. I just have a question, like with crisis. Do you focus on grief or all kinds of like immediate crisis in someone's life? Okay.
I worked in community mental health for most of my experiences, like all 3 years of my master's and clinical work experiences in the community, and so. Yeah, community mental health. You're going to get anyone walking in the door, right? Joe Schmo's coming in with blah. Oh, my God. It's any and all of the above.
Yeah, and we've had so much societal trauma the past 2 years.
All of the above.
Yeah. This just hit me as a question. This is not one of my prepared questions, but just hit me with you doing counseling and crisis. Do you do any... This is something might sound a little out there. Do you ever do like counseling or healing for anyone who's passed away?
You mean counseling spirits on the other side?
Yeah. Like if they, I don't know, laws of the universe are very different than I thought was possible, right?
I don't know. I've had spirits thank me for delivering messages. Mm-hmm. I had a little voice in my head at the end say thank you.
Okay.
So, like, I would like to think, yeah, I'm helping spirit heal, right? It's not just the sitter. It is also the spirit. But, like, full-blown counseling, like, I'm, like, summoning a spirit into my office, and I'm like, oh, you're going through so many things. No.
Here, talk to me. Let's talk about, like, how you're coping with facing your death.
No, no, but I do believe in counseling spirits. I think when we cross over, I do think that there are spirits or counseling spirits that do help us when we cross. I do.
And that's probably something you could do one day. Hopefully not for a very, very long time. Like,
but in my time, I'll say, I'm back, everybody. I'm
way down the line. Have you had, we have to get going about 10 to 15 minutes. I don't want to keep you too long. I just had to look at the time a second. Have you had any, like, or what would you say was the most, like, what the fuck? Like, there is something the most extreme evidential thing that you've had happen to you, either giving a reading or just in general, like saw someone sitting there?
I need a little help understanding your question, Liz. So are you saying like
okay,
dating for me and my own spiritual journey or mediumship readings, or
that there's evidence of an afterlife? Like, picture me, like my first few months, if I was like, has something happened in a reading or something that has happened to you, maybe a spirit coming to you that just inexplicable by normal means, evidence that consciousness is non-local. Is there anything you'd say that was like the most extreme or the best evidence you ever got in a reading? I mean,
I've had highly evidential readings. But if you're asking about my personal...
Or in a reading, like the most amazing... If you're... I don't know if that constitutes as too private. I know some... Like, is there something then you're able to share if something in a reading pops in that you would say is like the most evidential that you go to, that you're like, I still to this day cannot believe that happened?
There was a reading I had actually with it was through a person in the UK, I believe. John sent me a link, and out of like 200, 300 people, the medium was describing a grandmother figure that there was a lot of drama surrounding the hospital stay. And that there were questions about, are they going to live? Are they going to die? Nobody in the whole 200, 300 people, nobody claimed this grandmother. And I was sitting there and I was like, this sounds familiar. And then they went on, and I was like, this is for me. I was like, this is my grandma on my dad's side. And the evidence was fantastic about the controversy at the hospital. I don't know if my family's going to appreciate this, but I'll share. So my dad and my grandma were estranged for 10 years. And when she had an accident, she fell and hit her head and had a brain bleed. And they didn't catch it in time. And so she underwent 3 or 4 surgeries. My grandpa Bill was just putting her through the ringer, doing everything he could to try and get her to live. And I knew when I went in there. I said, she's, and I gave her a kiss goodbye because I knew. And I said, this is going to be the last time I kiss her goodbye. And my dad was in the room, and so our whole family was there. And it was, you could cut the tension with a knife. I mean, it was. You could, my whole body was tense. I mean, oh my God. It was like you could just cut it with a knife. And when the medium went on to describe the life situations, this hospital visit, how people, that my family were reacting, I said, this is incredible. I said, this is exactly how this went down. And I called my dad and I told him, and he said that's exactly right. Am I crazy? I'm remembering this right? And he said, yeah, I remember that too. And so that wasn't a.
And this was another medium reading, reading in a group, and you hadn't realized the claim.
100, 300 people, and nobody claimed this, and it was exactly like my grandmother and our family experienced in the hospital room. And the medium was very specific. And I don't even remember who this person was. I joined John's group or whatever, and he sent me the link in an email. I just hopped on. I mean, it was just so random. I just happened to be there. It was just so crazy. And John, of course, is laughing. He's like, of course you get picked, of course. And I was like, it's my first time. I've never been on this thing. But in my personal life, I would say it really started hitting me when I got feedback from my clients. You know, when they showed me the evidence I was giving in the readings, like with you, with your grandpa with the watch, when you showed me that picture of the watch, I think you showed me it.
I didn't. My mom described it, and I showed you a picture of the dresser.
Oh, you showed me a picture of the dresser. It wasn't the watch. It was the dresser. I'm sorry. So to actually see the photos and to, like, it's right there, right? Like, this is what I saw. And, oh, my God, that's the photo, right? It's like I cannot argue with that. It's there. Right? That's the freaking photo, right? That's the dresser. It's the video.
And that's what you saw.
It's like the stories when people give me the emails and they say, Dusten, I went back and I asked this, and I have literally probably 100, 200 emails over the course of 10 years. That is what has solidified it for me. All of the consistent validations over a span of 10 years, you know. That's all amazing. I get chills even talking about this still. It's I guess I have one more question, and then we have one more. I don't know how you're doing with time. I don't want to like over hog your time, but is it okay? I ask one more question. We have one more viewer question, and then I'm gonna have like a closing question, your proper like closing for when I post this, if that's okay. Okay, so this is something people ask me sometimes, and they're like, do you get uncomfortable hanging out with the mediums? Like, your friends, can they just read your mind? I mean, if I'm thinking something, or anyone, like, we all have our awkward thoughts. We probably don't want the whole world to know. Like, do you hear like the dialogue in people's heads, or? Oh, you're asking me that.
I'm asking you.
Oh,
sorry,
okay. I thought you were just,
no, I'm asking you. I'm saying, like, I mean, I know, because I know friends have even asked me, they're like, aren't you uncomfortable, like, being friends with mediums? Like, do they just know, like, every single thing you're thinking, or, like, you know? So
this is, again, where the edge of me being a therapist comes in. So I have learned to set boundaries. I have boundaries with my friends and family. I will not read for friends at like a gathering. This is our time. We're friends, right? We're having friend time. We're having a shared experience. That work is another time, right? If you want a reading, I have a whole list of FFF people that I can refer you to, right? It's not going to be me. Right? I'm referring you to the list. So it's those boundaries. So I will set them. Now, once in a while, Spirit will do a push, of course. And those are few and far between, and there's a reason for those times. But it's almost never with friends or family.
So you're not like hanging out, even like just going to a dinner party or any party with like friends and then their friends, and you're like, oh God, that person is like cheating on their boyfriend with this person, and they're thinking they want to break up with them. And the boyfriend's ready to propose. I mean, just all the awkward shit that goes on in lives.
You're talking about kind of like psychic static.
I don't.
That happens with younger mediums and psychics, right? That don't have those boundaries, that don't have to know how to close it, right? Or to separate. But again, a push will happen. If somebody's, going through something pretty severe, usually I'll get a sense, and I'll be like, hey, how you doing? Right? Are you, I don't want to say, are you okay? But I'll be like, how you doing? And kind of open that door. But for like a full-blown reading, that doesn't usually happen, right? If we set those boundaries, they can refer out, right? They're going to find another medium.
Right. And you don't hear like just the dumb thoughts people have. Like you might know something severe, like someone's like parent died recently or like boyfriend passed, like, but you wouldn't know, like, I'm just the asinine thoughts that run through our head. Like we wouldn't be at a dinner party and I'd be sitting there, I don't know, I'll just think of like the stupidest thing, like, God, I put on ugly eyeshadow, I'm feeling super insecure now. Like you wouldn't be knowing like, oh, this shit's running through this girl's head.
Psychic static. So again, that's usually something younger, less experienced mediums and psychics have that don't know how to shut it off or set those boundaries.
Yeah, that would probably be really irritating for a medium, I would think, to like, So her art vines, this will be the last reader question we're taking, because Dusten will kill me because I could keep on for 12 hours and I'll be like, Liz, seriously, I have to sleep at some point. I have a life. And then I'll just ask one final closing. So this is from her art vines. When I meditate, I see shapes and colors that move. They aren't distinct, so sometimes I can't tell what they are. But also faces, eyes, angels, hearts, butterflies are perceptible. How should her art vines interpret that?
So I would be hesitant to tell her an exact interpretation. I think there's several possibilities here that I would encourage her art vines to sit with and really, meditate and reflect and ask spirit for guidance. That to me could be, maybe it's a message from a loved one. Maybe it's her connecting to her guides. Maybe it's her, she's just meditating and these are just floating thoughts coming in and they're coming out. That's something that's going to take some time to really sit with. I would be hesitant to tell her an exact answer because I don't know. I don't have enough information with that.
And then I know people have asked me this a lot, and it always comes up at Forever Family Foundation events and just when people have messaged me this, like, ideally, obviously, everyone wants to be able to connect with their loved ones on their own. Oh, you're welcome, her art vines. Do you have any suggestions for how all of us who do not have your abilities, how we can all connect with our loved ones ourselves, or know if they're around us, or what can we do?
So when I teach intuitive and mediumship development courses, I'm teaching a couple later this month. I always talk about this. So I don't want people to be dependent on me, right? That's not my intention, right? Actually, a joke we say in the therapy world is my job is to get fired. So if I'm doing a good job, it means you don't need me anymore, right? That your loved ones are with you, same as being a medium, right? You know that your loved ones are there. You know, right? So you don't need the readings anymore, right? You have that. So something I encourage people is I always believe in a signs journal. So asking your loved ones for signs. And then when you do receive the signs, to write them in a journal, right? To kind of say, okay, on this day at this time, I got.
And can you just explain what a sign is? Because if anyone doesn't know, like I wouldn't have known that my first.
Yeah, so it's something that's different or unique, out of the ordinary, that kind of reminds you of someone who's passed, right? Or something that kind of, if it's a spirit that's communicating the sign. So, like for example, one of my signs for my grandma is a rainbow. And so that sign came to be because the Christmas before she died, one of our last conversations, in fact, this might have been the last conversation I had with her, she had told me that she had always wanted to go on a cruise. And I had been on like 6 cruises because, my other people paid for them, so I didn't have to. I don't have
Lucky you. Okay, not all of us live that life.
I went on. But anyways, she had told me, I said, Grandma, just do it. Just do it. Well, she never did it, and then she died. So that's something that will be with me for the rest of my life. So I always share people, if you're thinking about doing something, just do it. Just do it. You never know. I mean, she had an accident and died. That's my grandma. And you never know how much time you have. So when the next cruise I went on later that year, one of the excursions, I think it was in fact the first stop on the boat, it started to lightly drizzle. And I looked over and there was a rainbow right over the ship. And now I had already started to associate rainbows with my grandmother because the day of her service, she had worked as a security officer at St. Joe Hospital for over 20 years. The day of her funeral service, there was a rainbow over St. Joe Hospital. And I have a photo of that on my Instagram. So you guys can fact check it if you want. I made a post of that. And so on the cruise, there was a rainbow. So that solidified for me, rainbows are from grandma. You know what I mean? That is for me, that is her way of connecting. So a sign, typically it happens over time, right? It's kind of like something that's coming or that you're associating with somebody. But it's unique and personal to one person and to you. So that you know that sign is a message or from them, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, anyone can hit me up on, if anyone's feeling like they want more information about them, you can always message me on Instagram and, happy to. Yeah. Great. And have you gotten rainbows from your grandma?
Not recently. No.
Does she come talk to you? Do your loved ones come talk to you?
Verbally, no, not really. Once in a while, I'll just kind of feel their presence. Sometimes I'll just be like, oh, I think, yeah, somebody's here. But for me, it's typically a symbol or a sign, like the rainbow with my grandmother. With my grandpa, it's ants.
Ants like the bug?
Yeah, so when I was a child, my brother and I, we would use fly swatters, and we would go in my grandparents' backyard, and we would swat ants. And my grandpa would assign points to the ants, and so every point, we get points for every ant that we saw.
That's hilarious.
That's like a special connection I have with him, with the ants, which is kind of funny. So when I see ants in an odd place or a unique place, that's usually a symbol, like he's around or he sees. I suspect I'll see one around the holidays somewhere. But
I love that. Okay, well, oh my God, thank you so much, Dusten. Since I'm also going to be posting this on the actual podcast, do you want to tell everyone where they can find you? Because I could keep this conversation going all night, and we're already running over. And
I'm on all social media platforms, most of the big ones. So I have Facebook, I have my public page, Dusten Lyvers, it's just my name. Instagram at Fabulous Dusten, and then my website, www.dustenlyvers.com. And people can book readings on there. I do group readings, individual readings. And so if people are curious about that, they can go right on there. And then I do need more people for the classes coming up. So there's still spots in there. So if people are interested in intuitive development or mediumship development, I still have some spots in those.
And those will be virtual, so people can come from anywhere?
Yep, they'll be on Zoom. Yep.
And then I guess I should ask this, do people need to have abilities or talents to do them, or are these classes open to anyone? Like I could come.
Anybody. So everyone will receive something more than what they came in with. That is a promise I'm willing to make.
Right. Yeah, and from what I've heard and even my own experience, people with no abilities will suddenly have weird things happen to them when they take medium classes. Like that happened to me.
Things happen.
So take Dusten's classes. I was blown away when I took classes before. So if I can have spiritual, weird medium stuff happen to me, anyone can. So yes, I'm going to promote Dusten's classes. Take them.
Thank you, Liz.
You're welcome. And thank you so much for being on. And thank you, all of you, for coming. If any of you are my followers and are not following Dusten, please follow him. I love him. He's amazing. And thank you. Thanks, all of you. And again, if you have questions that suddenly hit you at any point, reach out.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh, sorry, Dusten, were you going to say something else?
Oh, no. I was going to say, or you can email me too if you have a specific question about readings and things.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Okay.
Hey, everyone. I'm really excited to let you know about the science and spirituality salons I'm now hosting. During these intimate events, a scientifically verified psychic medium will give all of you readings, and I will give a talk on the science and evidence that changed my mind about an afterlife. This will also be an amazing opportunity to get to meet some of you in person or virtually, and to share more about all the science and data that transformed my worldview and got me through my worst days. These can be hosted in your home, in a nearby cafe with a private room, or they can even be virtual. I've hosted a few already, and they were really special, fascinating, emotional, evidential. So if you're interested in getting a small group together over dinner, brunch, drinks, coffee, to learn more about the science and to get evidential medium readings, send me an email at hello@wtfjusthappened.net and put science and spirituality in the title. To get more information on what the fuck just happened, go to WTFJustHappened.net. There you can order my book, WTF Just Happened, A Sciencey-Skeptic Explores Grief, Healing, and Evidence of an Afterlife. You can learn all about how I came to conclude that there most likely is an afterlife, but you can also learn about the early stages of my grief and the amazing, fascinating people I met along the way. You can read about how much I harassed the mediums and scientists trying to get evidence to see if the mediums were cheating and see if what everyone was saying actually was true. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to stay updated on any new developments and any interesting new what the fuck updates. So if you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. It makes such a difference, especially for a new podcast like this one. And if any of you have had a crazy what the fuck yourself, have any questions, feedback, or just want to say hey, reach out on either Instagram at WTF_just_happened_, or email me at hello@WTFJustHappened.net. I love hearing from all of you. It makes my day hearing your stories and questions and feedback and all of it. And remember, you don't have to draw any final conclusions as you wonder, what the fuck just happened?